I want to remind everybody, the point of money is not to hoard it. The point of money is to use it to live your rich life. Let's do it.
Yes, let's jump right into it. So I wanted to start off by sharing a quote that I really liked from your book. The quote reads, "The words you choose are like an x-ray of how you feel about money. We avoid money, we fight about money, we worry about money. But the truth is revealed in the everyday words we use." So the reason that I really like that quote is because it really talks about the language that we use when we're communicating about money. And I think that's something that's so important. And something I noticed that you do a lot when you speak about your finances with your wife is you use the term our a lot. There's no my. And it takes away this very individualistic approach to talking about finances. And it really fosters a sense of togetherness. And so, a question I had for you is, why is reframing the language we use when discussing money with our partner so important?
The way we talk about money affects the way that we behave with money. And
Right.
the way that we behave with money affects the way that we feel about money. We have to remember that most of us have a love-hate relationship with money. We love it in the sense that we love looking at our friends going to Bora Bora on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we love going out to eat, but we also hate money. We hate talking about it. We hate dealing with it. We hate feeling ashamed of it. And what I want to do with couples in my new book is to help them see that money can be a source of joy and connection.
Yeah.
A lot of people see money and they think decimal places and percentage numbers and confusing terms. When I see money, I think of a family trip to Disneyland. I think of having extra money in case something goes wrong. I think of being able to splurge for dessert and not worrying about it. And that is what I want to help couples do with this new book.
That makes a lot of sense. Another thing that I really liked about you talk about in your book is the 4 different money types, which was very good to read because it made me self-aware of my own money type.
Which one are you?
So would say that individually, I'm an optimizer when I'm just looking after my own personal finances. However, I think that in a relationship, I can be a little bit of a worrier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great insight. Lots of people have different threads of which money type they are. We can be combinations. We can change our money types over time. But, these 4 money types are so helpful to understand your relationship with money. And once you understand, for example, that you worry about money and you trace it back often to childhood, then suddenly you will be able to understand why you're worrying about money, perhaps even though you have a lot of it. It's
Right.
very common with people who have accumulated a lot of money and still agonize over the price of blueberries. It's not that they are broken, not at all. It's simply that they are worriers. And the good news is that you can understand that and you can actually develop a new relationship with money.
And so you mentioned that in certain situations, people can have a different money type. So do you think there's 2 money personalities that are just not compatible at all?
I think you can find compatibility with any money type. However, the hardest money type to be in a relationship with is probably the dreamer.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
you see the dreamer in the book?
Yes. And I think it's something I mean, I have been with people who are dreamers, and it can be very difficult to bring them back to reality,
Yeah,
ground them in reality without kind of seeming like a nag per se, or kind of
correct.
trying to, I guess, shrink their dreams.
That's right. Dreamer can sound positive. In many ways, we all like to dream. I want us to be able to dream with money, and I want us to be tethered to reality. It's not realistic to believe that you're going to win the lottery. You can hope that you're going to, but you can't build a future on that hope.
Right.
Um, Dreamers often believe that success is in their next deal, in the next gig, in the next
Yeah.
lottery winning. And the truth is that people can usually only afford to have those type of delusional dreams if and only if they are subsidized by someone else. That typically means their spouse is the one making the money and paying for everything, or they have an inheritance or parents paying for things. What you will quickly find is that when they are stripped of those subsidies, for example, if their partner goes out of town for 2 weeks and they have to deal with everything, suddenly they do it. They're
Yeah.
not dreamers anymore. They're living in the real world.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to touch reality in order to reconnect with it.
And let's say, so for example, you have a partner that may not have read your book yet, and they may not, let's say, be aware they have an avoidant relationship with money. How can we make our partners more aware of their own relationship to money, I guess, without making them feel bad about it per se?
Right in the first chapter of Money for Couples, I start off by outlining how to have your first positive conversation with money. I love this framing because I've spoken to couples who have been married 25 years and they have never had a single positive conversation about money.
Wow.
So we start off by acknowledging, hey, you know what? I really want to talk about money with you. And step one, this is going to be awesome because I want us to be able to talk about our dreams and spend money on the things we love. So you're starting off in a positive way. Next, here's how I feel about money today. I feel overwhelmed. I feel guilty. I feel behind. How about you? Notice that in this conversation, you are tossing the ball to your partner. Very often, when I speak to couples on my podcast, they have monologues about money. We are interested in a dialogue. So, here's why this conversation would be awesome. Here's how I feel today. Here's how I want to feel. I want to feel excited. I want to feel connected. I want to feel competent. How about you? And finally, when should we talk next? Meaning you don't have to talk about everything in your first positive money conversation. Literally, this should be a max 15 minutes. You give each other a kiss, give each other a hug, declare victory, and go home. You have the rest of your life to talk about money together.
Yeah. No, I even noticed in your book, you said, like, don't talk about money when someone comes home from work and they're tired and, Saturday morning over a coffee, like you're feeling good, like maybe then bring up the conversation. So I think that timing is also very important.
Yeah, you got to plan for it. Just as we would plan at work, what's the right time to talk to our boss or somebody who works with us? You wouldn't hit them up with five aggravated questions the minute they walk into work. Yet we do that with money.
Yeah.
So many couples, it's one partner who feels anxious, worried, and they will bring it up in bed at 9:30 at night. This is a guaranteed way of creating an adversarial relationship with money. Frankly, I don't want to talk about money at 10 p.m. at night. And
No.
this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
So we got to set time. We got to let the other partner be involved, plan, contribute to the agenda, and have a calm, quiet place to talk about it. In other words, money is important. Show it the respect that it deserves in your relationship.
Now I want to transition a bit and get a little bit personal, just like how you do on the podcast. So I want to go deep and share a personal story that I went through kind of recently and get your opinion on it and just your thoughts on young couples entering a relationship and handling money in general. So my ex and I were together for 5 years before we decided to move in together. And during this time, prior to moving in, we never really discussed money. I was still in school, working a part time job. He was a little bit older than I was. He was more established, like he was working full time. And finances at that point in our relationship were never super relevant. However, now we transitioned and we're looking to move in together. And I was very straight up about my finances. I'm like, look, I make this amount of money. These are my expenses. How about you? Like, what's your financial picture looking like? And he was like, don't worry about it. You're stressing for no reason. And so every time I tried to have a conversation, I was kind of always hit with the brick wall. So naturally, as we moved in together, the conversations just went away, and so he ended up covering the bigger expenses related to money. So, for example, the payments of the house, and I took on smaller expenses like groceries, our Wi-Fi, and things like that. But after a few months, tensions definitely grew, and I was hit with comments like, "Well, you're not paying for it, so why do you care?" And there
Wow.
was a particular moment actually, and I remember it like it was yesterday. We were at Costco, and he wanted to buy a bag of high chew candies, and they were like it was like a big jumbo size bag. And I was like, "Do we really need all this candy for 2 people?" Like, it had nothing to do that it was a $10 bag of candy. I'm like, "I just don't want to have all this candy around because I don't wanna eat it." And he's like, "Yeah, like, I want this bag of candy." And I was like, "Well, if you want it." He's like, "Well, again, you're not paying for it, so why do you care?" And that made me feel really bad, and it made me think, "Well, am I not contributing enough?" And so he at one point, he even suggested having a joint bank account, which I wasn't comfortable with because we weren't married, and again, we didn't really talk about finances. So then fast forward 6 months later, the relationship ended, and I ended up moving out.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would just love to unpack this scenario with you and kind of get your take on young couples moving in together and kind of like how those early money conversations should look.
Thank you so much for sharing this personal story. I share a lot of personal stories myself about how my wife and I have had challenging conversations about a prenup and combining accounts. And first off, just really appreciate the courage because this is as personal as it gets.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage. And I feel like your story will connect with so many people. Uh, so I just feel appreciative that you're even bringing it up publicly. Um, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, of course.
When when was the first time you talked about money?
So the first time that we talked about money was when we were looking for a place and I was like, "Well, what is our budget? Like what's the range?"
Mhm.
And again, it was kind of like, "Don't worry about it." And he kind of took lead on the places that we would look at.
When he said, "Don't worry about it," how did you feel?
I felt pretty anxious, and I think that's why in the beginning of the conversation I said, like, if I when I'm in a relationship, I'm a little bit more of a worrier, um,
Mhm,
because I didn't know the full financial picture, and for me, I do like to fully be aware of, like, what's going on, like, what are we looking for?
mhm. When you look back on your relationship as it relates to money, what stories did you tell yourself?
Like, you mean from my childhood?
No, just looking back on this relationship, again, as it relates to money, what stories did you tell yourself? For example, "He's got it," or "I will ask more questions later," or "It's fine. I still have money in my savings account." What
Yeah.
stories did you tell yourself?
I told myself because he also was very much he enjoyed taking on that role of being a provider, so I had felt that if he's saying that he has it, well, then he does, and I also know that because I work full time, I also have myself in the event of something happening.
Ah,
So, even though he was having being the provider, I could have contributed more and, the conversations around money could have been different. However, again, I was hit with that brick wall, so as he had himself, I also knew that I had myself, if that makes sense.
makes perfect sense. Looking back, what were the major lessons you took away?
Oh, the biggest lesson I took away was definitely if the conversations are not happening, do not move in. Don't even like if you can't have that conversation of like, what's our budget? Of like
Yeah.
when you're going to look for a place, then, probably not a good idea to look in the first place.
I think that's a really good lesson. And I think that's why I'm so glad that you're talking about this. I think there's so many people um, who slide into a relationship without talking about the important things. Money is important. There's no reason to apologize for wanting to know about money, wanting to know about your own money and wanting to know about your partner's money and wanting to know how are you two going to come together.
Yeah.
Very often we feel weird asking about money as if we are making the other person uncomfortable or we're presenting ourselves in a certain way that we're greedy. No, I want to know what kind of food you like to eat. If you only want to eat chicken nuggets, we're over. That, like, everybody talks about what kind of food. The worst thing in the world is to be with a picky eater. That sucks. But we won't talk about, do you have $100,000 of debt?
Yeah.
That is how shameful we feel about money.
Yeah.
This is with somebody we're moving in with, somebody we have an intimate relationship with. So I have a few lessons from the story that you told. Um, First off, the biggest red flag with money and couples is if one person is not willing to talk about money. We can work with somebody who has debt. We can work with somebody who has a spending problem. We can even work with somebody who sees money differently. That's okay. You can have a very healthy relationship if the two of you see money differently. But if one person will not talk about money, that's a dead end. So that's the first. The second thing is it's great to ask for clarity on finances. It's even better to have a plan and then ask your partner what they think. For example, in your case, maybe in a future relationship, you might go into it saying, hey, this is a natural time for us to talk about money. We're about to move in together. Here's, I've run some numbers. Here's how much I can afford for housing. I'd love to know what you're thinking. And then I'd love to just talk in general about money. How do you see money? Do you have debt? What excites you about money? Notice a few things there. There are certain pivotal moments in our life where it is totally natural to talk about money. Those would be moving in together. Let me start again. That would be taking your first trip together.
Yeah.
Who pays for that? What kind of hotel are we staying in? Moving in together, it's a natural one. Getting engaged, getting married, having kids, getting a house. There are about 5 to 10 big moments in life where
Yeah.
it's just so natural to talk about it. I would encourage you to do that. And the second thing is, it's great to ask, but let's not give our power away. Let's actually decide, here's how much I can contribute. How about you? What this does is it equalizes a relationship. One person could make more, that's okay, but both partners in a relationship should be contributing in some way. Could be financial, could be non-financial. There's so many ways to be a partner in a relationship. It doesn't simply have to be about earning money.
No, I actually really like how you phrase that, that it doesn't have to be in a financial way, but contributing to the relationship is huge.
Yeah.
Another thing you talk about a lot is joint bank accounts, which in my situation, I wasn't comfortable with. But I know in the book that you mentioned that even if you're not married and you live together, having a joint bank account isn't a bad idea. So, what are kind of the pros and cons of having a joint bank account for a non married couple?
So I think you when your ex asked you to open up a joint account, what was your reaction?
So, the reason I think I was reluctant to do so was just had a lot to do with kind of like how I was raised and like traditionally. Like, my parents do have a joint bank account, but that was after they were married.
Okay.
So, I felt that I would gladly commit my finances
Mhm.
if we were fully committed to each other.
I understand. Money is very intimate.
Yeah.
And very often you have people who live together, but opening up a joint checking account feels like, whoa, 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 hold on. So I recommend that when you are married, you have a joint account. That's for sure. Some couples, when if they are living together before they get married, they open up a joint account. That's okay. You don't have to, but some couples choose to. And the easiest way is to have a joint checking account for your joint expenses. So the way that it would work is actually a good opportunity for couples to talk about money is, hey, how much are our joint expenses going to cost? That would be rent, groceries, utilities, the things that we both use. Let's talk about it. And this is where you start to have a really robust conversation. Well, here's how much I can contribute to rent. Ooh, here's utilities. Ooh, that's more than I think. Let's get a blanket. Forget about the heat. And you really discuss groceries. I'd like to do the grocery shopping. I think I'm pretty good at it. Okay, cool. Well, can you help prep on Sunday evenings? This is where we start the practice of talking about money. Again, we take away the mystique, we take away the shame. We just go, look, let's be pragmatic. I have money, you have money, we have bills. We got to figure out which bills are joint, which are singular. And it doesn't mean that you're a good or bad person. Same for me. It's just that we need to come up with a plan together. Then, if you have a joint account, you each send that much money to the checking account every month, which is then used to pay off your joint expenses. That is how you would do it. Whether you choose to or not is up to you. However, when you get married, I recommend you follow the account structure from chapter 9 of my book, which shows you how to have your account set up so everything is simple and you are both part of a team.
Yeah. And I think that, again, having that joint account really does foster that sense of togetherness. And that kind of leads me to my next question is so you talk a lot about asking the big $30,000 questions, not the $3 ones. And so what are some $30,000 questions couples can ask each other to kind of open the lines of more positive communication?
Start off with some really fun stuff. What is your rich life? In the next 10 years, there's something I have called the 10-year bucket list exercise. In the next 10 years, what do you want to do that would make our life incredibly rich and meaningful? You each take a piece of paper, you take 5 minutes, you jot down a few things, and then you compare. Oh my gosh, you want to go skydiving? Whoa, that's not for me, but I'll meet you at the bottom.
Yeah.
You want to learn Spanish? You want to go to Italy? And on, and you both get excited about each other. Then you pick one of those items and you actually plan it. You actually say, when are we going to do it? How much money do we need? And you set up an automatic savings plan. That's a very exciting $30,000 question. We also have more practical ones. What are our four key numbers? Our fixed costs, our savings rate, our investment rate, and our guilt-free spending rate. These are all part of my conscious spending plan. If we have debt, what is the exact month and year that our debt will be paid off? When will we be a millionaire? These are questions that are big $30,000 questions. What is our asset allocation? That's a question almost no couple asks, but instead they will fixate on the price of turnips. What a waste of time.
Yeah.
Ask the $30,000 questions, get those right, and you will never have to worry about the price of coffee again.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like coffee is such a big one because everyone's like, I mean, I get it. But even now, it's like the holiday season, Starbucks holiday drinks are back. People want, if they enjoy their coffee, they enjoy their coffee. It's not going to make or break.
I wanted to create a life where I never have to worry about the price of coffee or dessert. And so when I go out, if I see a coffee shop, I want to get a coffee, I know that will have no effect on my finances. However, I pay very close attention to the roughly five big financial questions in life. What's my savings rate and investment rate? What's my investment allocation? And most importantly, are my wife and I aligned on money? If we are doing those things, we can get the coffee. It's not a problem.
Exactly. And it's like the simple joys too. I mean, for me, like I love going to work at a coffee shop, like just during the day. Like if I, and that's something I enjoy. Like it's what I enjoy. It helps me live my rich life.
I love that. I love hearing that. So we should remember that so much of money advice is focused on frugality. It's focused on cutting back. It's focused on restriction. No, you can't buy coffee. No, you can't buy jeans. No, you can't go on vacation. Save your money until you're 96 years old, and then maybe you can take a trip in economy seats. And I want to remind everybody, the point of money is not to hoard it. The point of money is to use it to live your rich life.
Yeah.
Of course, you should save. Of course, you should invest. Those are automatic. It's easier to invest than it is to brush my teeth every day because it's totally automated. But we've got to remember, everybody teaches you how to save, but very few people teach you how to spend money meaningfully. And you can do all of the above in your relationship using money for couples.
No, for sure. And even I just think back to like how I was raised. Like I was raised in like a very middle class household, but something that my mom always said to me was, you can do what you want within your means. So it was never like if I wanted to do something extra or, sign up for an extra dance class or something on the weekends. If that made me happy and I had the means to do so, go for it.
Yeah.
It was never like, don't do it because you're going to waste your money. I never heard, like, that language wasn't really used in my household. So I think that kind of stuck with me into my adulthood.
You're very lucky to have had great lessons like that. I think that's amazing. That reminds me how important our money behavior is a reflection of the way that we were raised. And often you will discover that people who feel scarce about money grew up around their parents saying, "We can't afford it. We don't talk about money in this family." And that leaves marks. 30 years, 40 years later, people will come and talk to me and they will have some money, but they feel guilty every time they spend. They constantly worry that they will not have enough. And I can show them the numbers and I can show them how much they'll have, but it doesn't change their feeling. Why? Because in order to live a rich life, we have to do two things. One, we have to know our numbers. That means you need to know your four critical numbers on the conscious spending plan. You need to understand when will your debt be paid off? How much will you have at retirement? Will it be enough? The basic numbers. We need to understand the basic language of finance. It's not hard, but we need to know it. Second, highly neglected, we need to master our money psychology. That means you need to talk about money. You need to train yourself to feel excited about money. You need to try different things with money and connect that feeling of joy with the money you've accumulated. If we do those two things, know our numbers and master our money psychology, then we have a very good shot at living a rich life.
Totally. And I think one thing, too, that I think I heard growing up that may have affected my past relationship was I used to hear that it's very impolite to ask somebody how much money that they have or how much they make. So, because I heard that a lot growing up, like my background's Italian, and that's just like a no no. Like, you never ask someone how much you make because that's considered very rude. So, I think that maybe in my past, I was reluctant to do so because I constantly heard, like, those are no no questions. Like, you just don't ask people how much money they make.
Isn't it amazing? You know, we will talk about what people like to eat. We will talk about people's relationship history. But the minute it comes to asking, hey, we're about to get married, maybe we should talk about how much debt we have. Suddenly it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't
Oh,
want to don't want to be too crazy.
yeah,
And one of the goals I have with money for couples is to take away the apologies and take away the mystique of money. Money is a pragmatic, important part of a relationship. We would never say we need to have the conversation about parenting because you have hundreds, thousands of conversations about parenting. We would never say we need to have the conversation or we don't talk about food in this family. Of course, we talk about food. What are we having for dinner?
yeah.
But yet we do that with money. We say we need to have the conversation. No, we need to have 1,000 positive conversations and we got to talk about it. There's nothing to apologize for. In fact, sometimes I meet couples and they don't talk about money very much. And in many ways, they take pride in how little they spend. And if it's always occurred to me that it's a tragedy to live a smaller life than you have to.
Mhm.
If you have the ability to be generous with your money, to tip huge, why wouldn't you? You have the ability to try and treat your friends to a beautiful dinner or even vacation. Why wouldn't you? There's no virtue in playing smaller than you have to. So, part of money for couples is actually encouraging you to live your full, rich life. Please note, rich does not necessarily mean you have to buy only luxury goods. Although, if you want to buy a beautiful sweater or bag, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. I love nice clothes. But a rich life can be traveling 2 months a year. A rich life can be picking up your children from school every afternoon. A rich life can be buying a beautiful coat. It's your rich life, and you decide how to live it.
That's great. So I wanted to transition again because even though your book is called Money for Couples, you do make it clear that singles do have a lot to learn from your book as well. So I wanted to add a little layer to my situation for you. And I do have a little dependent, and he is a furry one, and his name is. And so essentially, like, he's a dog, and when you have a pet, you have things like their monthly food expense, their vet bills, even like a daycare when I have to come to work or in the event that I'm traveling. And so for me, Liam is a financial priority. But when I get into a next relationship, that person may not have an emotional connection the same way that I do to my dog. And so I was wondering how I can communicate Liam's role as a financial priority in my life to a future partner without it seem like I'm imposing a priority on them.
What a great question. I love this question. We all have something that is a priority to us. Maybe in a relationship, our partner has the same priority, maybe not. That's okay. I call these money dials. Money dials are the things that you love to spend money on. And in fact, you can turn that dial way up. The most common money dial is eating out. People love to eat out, they would love to spend more. The next most common money dial is travel. Then there are lots of other money dials, including convenience, etc., self care, health and wellness, etc. Um, so you love your dog, and in a future relationship, the way that I would approach it is as you start to talk about money, you simply let them know, look, this is my dog, love my dog. This is about how much I spend on my dog. Here's how I think we should handle it. What do you think? Now, in your case, if this is your dog, probably I would recommend that you pay for this dog out of your own personal money. And what I love about the account setup that I outline in chapter 9 is that with couples, your future is together. Meaning when I think about my future, what gets me excited, it is almost all of it together with my wife. The places we're going to travel, the things we're going to do together, it's together. And yet, we still have individual expenses that we like, and we should have our own money for them. For example, my wife loves self care. She's into it. I'm not.
I can relate. I can relate.
Like, she loves it and she likes to spend money on it, and she should.
Yeah.
So she's got her own no questions asked money in her own account that only she has access to, and she spends whatever she wants on that. I have my own individual money that I spend, and we can still have our joint future together, which every couple should have. Joint accounts, joint priorities, joint rich life vision, and also you have your own money set aside for safety, for security, or spending on the things that you and only you love.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it is something I was thinking about because even like a scenario happened where someone I was dating asked how much I spend a month on my dog's food. And I was like, oh, just $200 without actually thinking, like, well, maybe they're actually inquiring, thinking, like, is this dog going to be my financial burden too?
It's a great question. And I love that you had that conversation. Some people come into a relationship with student loan debt. Some people come into a relationship taking care of family obligations, or they have a certain amount of rent that or mortgage that they pay. These are conversations that have to happen. Now, fortunately, in the book, I give you the word for word scripts that you can use to talk about money, even if your partner avoids it, even if you typically get in fights around money. The book will show you exactly what to say and even what to do if you start getting argumentative about money.
And my next question for you is when is the right time, when you're talking to a new person, things are getting serious to kind of bring up financial responsibilities and just finances in general in your relationship? Because I think about like if I was on a date with someone and they asked about my salary, I'm like too soon. I might be a little bit put off. Like, why are you inquiring about my salary? It's not relevant right now.
Some
So,
people in the financial community encourage talking about money on the first date.
oh my
I find that a little nerdy. Like, who
God.
wants to be on a first date talking about your asset allocation? It's like get a life. So sometimes I wonder if some of these folks have ever been on a first date.
Yeah.
But I do think you can learn about money in really simple ways. When you're getting to know somebody, obviously you're curious. You want to get to know them. You ask them questions like, where'd you grow up? What'd you guys do for fun as a family? Where'd you go to school? What was that like? What do you like to do? Suddenly you're listening and you're listening. If they go, oh, yeah, we went skiing every winter to uh, Park City, you go, oh, wow. Okay. That tells me something. If it's like I grew up middle class family and where did we go for summer? Nowhere. Like our family vacations were getting in the minivan and driving in California. That's our
Yeah.
vacation. That tells you a lot. But as you develop your relationship, of course, you can talk about money more. One way to do it is actually to share some vulnerability from your own end. For example, hey, I've been reading this book and I'm setting up my accounts correctly. I realized in my early 20s, I wasn't paying as close attention to my finances as I could have. And I incurred a little bit of debt, but I've actually been putting a plan in place and paying it off. So it should be completely debt free by next year. And I feel really proud of that. Um, what about your finances? What were you thinking in your early 20s? Notice that in that example, it is really connective when you can admit something that maybe you didn't know, or maybe certainly a change that you have made. People respond well to that because if there's one thing we hate with money, it is to be judged.
Yes.
And then you can ask more. There are natural pivotal moments in a relationship, as I mentioned, first trip, moving in, getting engaged, getting married, where you can really talk about the details of your finances.
Are you still doing okay for time? I just wanted to wrap up with some rapid fire questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So for the rapid fire question, the first one I have for you is what's the worst financial advice you've ever received?
Get a job at. Wait, I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. This person told me to get a job at an industrial company and work there for 40 years so that I could retire with $1 million in the bank. I was like, 1 million? That's it? No, thank you.
Good. That's a good one. So what is the biggest financial red flag in a relationship? And should this be a deal breaker?
The biggest financial red flag is a partner who will not talk about money. And if anything is a deal breaker when it comes to money, it is that.
Yeah. No, I'm very aligned on that one. And what's one piece of financial advice you wish you heard sooner?
Have fun with your money. I'm an optimizer. I am really good at making plans and running scenarios of my money. And it took a lot of work for me to realize optimization is good. It's gotten me a lot of success, but I can turn the page and I can begin a new chapter of my life, a chapter where I use money to be more adventurous, more spontaneous, um, more fun. And I wish I had done that earlier.
What's one piece of knowledge you feel every grade school student should get?
Understand how compound interest really works.
Yeah, I wasn't taught that in grade school, so
It's a
yeah.
secret weapon. It's crazy. I was lucky enough, to start investing at around the age of 14,
Wow.
and that money has compounded and not a lot of money at the beginning, just, a teenage kid, but the power of compounding is something that is truly hard to understand until you see it over and over again. And then it's pure magic.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so the last question I have for you is have you ever gotten the financial ick?
Oh yeah, I get the biggest financial ick I get is people who are not generous.
Yeah.
Cheap people. Ugh.
Mhm.
From a professional standpoint, I can help a lot of people, but I can't fix cheap. From a personal perspective, I don't want to be around cheap people. That's
No,
the ultimate ick.
I have a funny story. When I was in grade 12, I had a very like short-term boyfriend, but he drove a very fancy car and that his parents had purchased for him. And he used to ask me, and in the time I was in high school, I just had a part-time job. I didn't have a car myself. and he used to ask me for gas money to pay for gas. And I was like, "You know what? I don't think this is gonna work."
The, the cheap stuff, it just kinda rubs everybody the wrong way.
It really does.
And I think, on the other hand, one of the things that I really admire is people who are generous. Generous with, uh, people around them, generous with their family, generous with waiters and waitresses. Um, I'm trying to embody that online and show people you can make a lot of money and be generous. In fact, it actually you can actually do it and help a lot of people with your money. That is a very powerful lesson for people to realize money's not simply meant to accumulate and sit on and swim in. No, it's meant to help people. It's meant to spend on things that are beautiful, things that you love, things that make you happy. That is the point of a rich life.